Welcome back to the channel. We've just finished an intense 3-week block of training towards Ironman Lanzarote. We're currently in a recovery week, which we are really enjoying, aren't we? But it's been a few weeks since we took a deeper look at any of the data or the structure of the training, so I thought it would be interesting to share what we've been up to, take a look at some of the key sessions, see if we're making any progress on the road to Lanzarote, talk about some of the highs and lows, and think about what we might be doing going forwards. So looking at the last 3 weeks as a whole, we've done 61.5 hours total training volume. The focus within that has continued to be on building the aerobic capacity and aerobic efficiency. That was, if you've been watching, something that we identified relatively early on and needed to work on quite a lot in order to be ready for this event. So a lot of long, hard sessions, basically. In terms of weekly hours trained, if you watch the first few weeks of our Road to Lanzarote series, you'll have noticed that week on week we kind of built the volume. Within this block we left it the same, and so we basically were training around about the 20-hour-a-week mark every week. There's a few reasons that we held that volume steady. I think the most important one is it just fits with everything that we've got going on in life. I think if I pushed it much further than that on a consistent basis, I would be running the risk. I don't think I'd be recovering as well. I'd be running the risk of injury, and yeah, it would just be really, really hard to fit it in around work, businesses, other stuff that we've got going on. I think the other thing that's been a massive positive of getting it to that 20-hour-a-week mark and then leaving it there for this 3-week block has been that it's really, really allowed me to focus on the quality of the sessions as well as the volume and the quantity of hours that we're doing. So I've been able to recover better from the sessions and being able to really focus in and make sure that we're hitting the right intensities to have the right effect that we wanted. So I think that not only were we able to get in a really good amount of volume week on week, but the quality of that volume was really, really good as well. So I think the best way to take you through the last 3 weeks is to go week by week and have a look at the key sessions. So if we look at week number 1, you can see over on the right hand side there we did 21 hours that week, and I think the key sessions this week were these overgearing intervals on Tuesday, where we were really focusing on trying to build the strength in the cycling. We followed that up the next day with these run intervals where we were trying to hold a really nice high aerobic heart rate with a little bit of fatigue in the legs from the day before. And then on the weekend we had some big long sessions where we were doing sort of this 3-hour aerobic ride, and we had a 2.5-hour trail run, which we did cover on the channel, and you can go check out if you want to see me running over some big hills and biting off a bit more than I can chew running around the Yorkshire Dales, then definitely go back and check that one out. So if we take a look at that first session, the overgearing, what we did was it was a 2-hour ride with 10 6-minute overgearing intervals in it. So we're trying to go at, you can see on the graph here, trying to hold a really high power, sort of between 330 and 350 watts, but at a really low cadence, around about 60 RPM. So yeah, really focus on building that leg strength within the pedal stroke. That's something that I think will be really, really important in the later stages of the Ironman ride. I think especially in Lanzarote, where it's a very hilly course, and I think the strength element is really going to play a big factor in that. So yeah, that went really well. You can see there pretty much had really, really good power across all 10 of those intervals. So we got an hour of really, really good intensity. Yeah, really good quality session. That one went really, really well. And then the following day we followed that up with this run interval session where we were doing relatively longer reps and trying to hold a really nice high aerobic heart rate, and kind of see what pace would come out with a little bit of fatigue in the legs from that hard bike session the day before. So you can see along here we basically did 1 3-mile rep, 2 2-mile reps, and 3 1-mile reps. We were repeating those basically on 7 minutes per mile. So for the 3-mile rep, whatever time I had left under 21 minutes was the rest interval, and then I would go again for the 2-mile reps. On the 2-mile reps, whatever I had under 14 minutes, I'd go again, and then 1-mile reps every 7 minutes I would go again. So the rest was kind of determined by how fast I got in. We managed to keep a really, really good heart rate, and the pace was coming out consistently around about 4 minutes per kilometre on those. So yeah, that was really, really good. It went really, really well. I was really happy with the pace return for the heart rate, especially with a little bit of fatigue in the legs. And then moving on to the weekend, we did this 3-hour aerobic ride, which went really, really well. You can see there we held a normalised power of 245 and an average power of 239 for 3 hours. And we were actually able to build it in the last hour as well, and build up the power and go a bit harder. So yeah, we're still feeling really, really strong at the end of the ride. Qualitatively, from memory, that one felt really, really good. I felt really, really strong. So that went really, really well. And then on the Sunday, we had a trail run, which I really, really enjoyed. If you want to find out more about that, I would definitely go back and watch the video that we did about that. I will link it in the card above. So moving on to week number 2, we had a slightly different structure on the week this week because it was Easter weekend, so we had 4 days off over the weekend, which meant we had more time for training, more time for recovery, so we could really, really load up the weekend with training, and so we took it a little bit easier at the start of the week in order to, 1, recover from the previous week of training a little bit, and 2, really set ourselves up really, really well to hit some really, really good training over that 4-day weekend. So I think the key sessions that fell into week number 2 were another sort of strength building session on Thursday, so another overgearing interval ride on Thursday, the 4-hour aerobic ride on Saturday, and the run intervals on Sunday. So if we take a look at that overgearing interval session on Thursday, it's very similar to what we did in week number 1, just with a couple of minor differences. So the general principle is the same. We're trying to ride at a higher power but a lower cadence in order to promote strength building, but the intervals were longer, so we targeted just a slightly lower power. So this week we were targeting more around about the 300 watt mark in terms of power, but still trying to hold a really, really nice low cadence. So you can see there, heart rate's nicely controlled on all the intervals, recovering well between them all. It went really well. Not too much to say about that one beyond that. So then we headed into the Easter weekend. Again, we did a whole video of the whole 4 days of that, so if you're interested in the specific details of stuff, definitely go back and watch how that weekend unfolded. But the ride on Saturday was a really, really good ride. If we take a quick look at it now though, you can see it's a 4-hour ride. Normalised power was 261 watts and the average power was 259. Heart rate stayed really nice and low the whole time, averaging 135 and maxing out at 149 beats a minute. So the whole way through, it's super aerobic, it felt super comfortable. I was really, really surprised actually how much power came out for that heart rate, and how well that session went. Yeah, that was a really, really positive session, and something that I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, yeah, would not have gone that well. So then on the Sunday, we did an interval run session that was quite similar to the one we'd done in week number 1, except this time we increased the volume of that a little bit. So this time we did 1 4-mile rep, 2 2-mile reps, and 4 1-mile reps. Again, we were doing that on very fatigued legs, and trying to hold a nice high aerobic heart rate. This week, like in week number 2, the legs were really, really fatigued because I'd done that interval session on Thursday, we'd done a brick session on the Friday, and then I'd done that really long 4-hour aerobic ride on the Saturday beforehand. So my legs were very, very tired leading into that one. The pace return was a little bit slower than it was the week before, so I think they were more in the sort of like 405 to 410 range for the majority of the efforts, apart from the last 2, where I managed to kind of kick on a little bit, and I think maybe had a little bit of help from the terrain and the conditions. To be honest, I was really happy with how it went. It went well given the amount of fatigue that I had, but it was a real mental battle. I was really, really having to, yeah, mentally overcome the physical fatigue. It was much less about it being physically challenging than it was mentally keeping on going. So moving on to week number 3, we had some really big interval sessions in week number 3, kind of separated out with some easier work in between them in the middle of the week. So week started off with this ride on Monday, which was obviously the last day of that 4-day weekend, so we're carrying a load of fatigue, but early morning on the Monday did this 4-hour interval ride. The first hour was nice and easy, the second hour was sort of like aerobic power output, and then we did 10 4-minute intervals sort of over aerobic. So that went really, really well. The 4-minute intervals at the end were all over 300 watts. The heart rate stayed really, really low throughout. I think that was down to fatigue as much as anything. It took me a really long time to kind of warm up and get into this session, so the heart rate stayed really low for a really long time. I think I was just really, really fatigued by the time I hit this one. It did go well though. It was a really good session and a good way to end that that 4-day weekend of training. So then we took it a little bit easier in the middle of the week, and then we had another big 4-hour interval ride on the weekend. The power and the heart rate files have got separated on this one because my heart rate monitor linked to the wrong Garmin, so I'm gonna have to show you one and then the other. You can see on this power file what the session kind of was. So it's an hour easy at the start, and then 1 10-minute interval, 2 8-minute intervals, 3 6-minute intervals, 4 4-minute intervals, 5 2-minute intervals, 10 1-minute intervals, and then 10 30-second intervals at the end where you're just emptying the tank. Ideally what you want to do, and you can see that I did do in this, was build the intensity a little bit as you're going through each of the intervals. And then at the end we had 45 minutes where we're just trying to hold an aerobic heart rate at the end and see what power comes out, holding that aerobic heart rate at the end of the session. So you can see there that the target was sort of like 280 to 320. We're right at the top of that all the time, or over the top of it in a lot of cases as the intervals got shorter. So we're kind of holding in these intervals basically anywhere between 320 and 360 watts, I think, as they get shorter and shorter and shorter. And then the ones at the end, the 30-second ones, we're just going full send and just seeing what comes out. So I think if we highlight the 45 minutes at the end of the ride, you can see there we've got a normalised power of 283 and an average power of 283, so super stable. Basically I was trying to hold an aerobic heart rate in that bit, and if we switch over to the heart rate file, you can see those interval spikes throughout the thing, and then if we highlight that last 45 minutes, you can see we're holding a really nice aerobic heart rate of 143 beats a minute. So yeah, that power return of 280 plus watts for 140 beats a minute is really, really promising. This interval session is one that I'll often do in the lead up to an Ironman, and most of the time it absolutely kicks my ass and it doesn't go very well. This time it went really, really well, so I was really, really happy with how that went. So the last session of the week that we did was 25 times 800 meters on the treadmill. We were trying to hold a nice high aerobic pace while we were doing that, so I was trying to hold about the same pace that I've been holding for those sort of longer 4 mile, 2 mile, 1 mile reps in the sessions in week number 1 and 2. And we were repeating those 800 meters on 4 minutes, so I was just trying to keep a nice high pace going, keep going, keep turning. Again, that's a session that I'll often do in the lead up to an Ironman, and that often doesn't go quite how I want it to go, but this one went really, really well. I would have liked to be able to push on to 30 times 800, but at 25 my legs completely went, like the fatigue just completely set in, and that was all that I could manage. I was still really, really happy with that. It was probably more than I expected I'd be able to get through than when I got on at the start of the session. So yeah, that was just over 2 hours, so 2 hours 10 minutes, just under 30 kilometers. So have we made any progress? Short answer, I think, is yes. I think if you look at if we compare the aerobic rides, that's the best way to see the progress. So I think in week 1 we did a 2.5 hour aerobic ride where the decoupling was really, really obvious within the session. So the heart rate just kept going up and the power dropped off when I tried to ride aerobically. And if you compare that to the sort of longer 3-4 hour rides we've been doing in this block of training, 1, they're longer, 2, we're putting out the same or more power for a heart rate that's sort of 10 to 15 beats per minute lower. and that heart rate is just tracking really nicely with the power. They're staying really stable. So if the heart rate increases, the power is increasing with it. If the power drops off, the heart rate is dropping with it as well. So I think you can really see in those long aerobic rides the effectiveness of what we've been doing. I think you can also see that in the easy rides. We're seeing much lower heart rates just on the easy rides and the easy runs. So they're also like 10 to 15 beats a minute lower for the same sort of power or pace output, which is also really good to see, and a really good sign as well of that aerobic efficiency being really good and improving. Yeah, I think also just I'm able to do more hours of training per week, recover better, and keep it going. So the consistency has been much better. So I think that that's also a really good sign of progress. Okay, you're back and you brought me a ball. Thank you. You're a good boy. Right, highs and lows of this training block. I think the highs were, yeah, you can really see the progress in what we're doing. I think that's always a really good positive thing, to be able to see the progress that you're making with the training. And like I said, I've hit some sessions that when I've tried to do them in Ironman training blocks before, I found really difficult, and actually this time they've gone really well. So I think those were the highs. Lows, I haven't had any specific lows, I wouldn't say, just the fatigue has been really high at certain points within it, so I've maybe been a bit grumpy. So I hope you enjoyed the update. Looking forwards, we're going to be moving into a sort of more race specific block, so we're going to be trying to train and look at some of the specific demands of the course, make sure that we're really well prepared to race really well in Lanzarote. We're probably going to put in a couple of races or events that will help us get sharp for race day, and we're probably going to do some big training days as well to make sure that we're really fit for the day. So if you don't want to miss out, make sure that you hit subscribe, and we'll see you next week.